Welcome to the deep dive. In our hyper-connected digital world, some threats, they don't really need an invitation. They just find their own way in and then, well, spread like wildfire. Today, we're taking a closer look at one of the most potent examples of this, computer worms. Our goal today is to really dig deep into these digital invaders. We'll explore their surprising origins, dissect how they launch their cunning attacks, and most crucially, peer into the future with the, frankly, unsettling emergence of AI-powered worms. It's about giving you the insights to truly grasp these threats, far beyond just the headlines.
And that grasp is absolutely essential because when we talk about malware, worms really do stand apart. See, unlike a virus that needs a host file or, say, a Trojan that tricks you into clicking, worms are fundamentally autonomous. They self-replicate and spread without any human help, often by relentlessly exploiting network connections and system vulnerabilities. Understanding that core difference is really your first line of defense.
Okay, so building on that then, what is a computer worm at its most basic level? Why are they such a distinct threat?
Well, at their core, worms are simply self-replicating pieces of malware. Pretty straightforward definition. But what truly differentiates them, like we just said, is their independence. They don't need to latch onto a legitimate program. They don't need to trick a user into running them. No, they're designed to find a way onto your system, make copies of themselves, and then actively seek out new vulnerable targets on a network, all on their own.
Right. And the consequences of that autonomy, they can be devastating. We're not just talking about minor annoyances here. Worms can consume massive network bandwidth, grinding entire systems to a halt, or even cause, full-blown network outages. They're often used to steal sensitive data, open backdoors for attackers to sneak in later, maybe corrupt files, or even transform your computer into a zombie bot, ready to launch coordinated cyber attacks like DDoS attacks, distributed denial of service. And some even act as, silent couriers, dropping other malware, maybe ransomware, onto infected machines once they're inside.
That's exactly right. And for organizations, the impact ripples far beyond just the technical damage. You've got the financial cost of recovery, potential data breaches leading to huge fines, the erosion of customer trust, and severe reputational damage. It can be genuinely catastrophic. The truly insidious nature of worms, I think, lies in their ability to compromise not just individual machines, but the very integrity of our interconnected digital infrastructure.
It's a sobering thought. So to really understand how a worm operates, it helps to think of it in distinct phases, right? Almost like a biological process. First, there's initial infection, how they get in, then propagation, how they spread, and finally exploitation, what they actually do once they're, deeply embedded. Let's kick off with that critical first step. So how do these digital invaders first gain entry? You said it often starts with them exploiting a weakness.
Yeah, either a software vulnerability or maybe a clever social engineering trick. But the key difference from other malware, as we've discussed,
Yeah.
is that once they're in, they don't need you to do anything else. They immediately start to self-replicate and spread.
Ah.
And the entry points can be quite varied. Sometimes it's through what looks like a legitimate phishing email. The kind with a malicious attachment disguised as something urgent, like an invoice. Click it, and the worm can download. Other times, and this is really insidious, it's by exploiting security flaws in software or operating systems. You might just visit a compromised website or even connect to an infected network, and boom, the worm gets in without you needing to click a single thing.
Wow.
We also see worms spread through social engineering tactics, tricking users into downloading fake software updates, maybe legitimate-looking files from peer-to-peer networks or social media. And of course, we can't forget removable media, USB drives, especially if their auto-run feature is enabled, which can automatically execute a worm the moment you plug it in.
And this isn't just a modern problem, right? These methods, they have deep roots. I mean, the very first known computer worm, the Morris worm, that was back in 1988, created by Robert T. Morris. It leveraged common weaknesses in those early internet systems, like a coding error, a buffer overflow, I think it's called.
That's right, buffer overflow allows a program to write data beyond its allocated memory space. Very common vulnerability back then.
And a backdoor in an email program, too. What's really striking is that Morris apparently didn't intend for it to cause harm, but a programming error made it replicate like crazy. It ended up affecting something like, 10% of all internet-connected computers?
Roughly, yes.
Yeah.
Caused significant network congestion and system crashes. It was a huge wake-up call.
Yeah, it demonstrated the real power of autonomous propagation for that nascent digital world. So once a worm has successfully infiltrated a system, how does it move beyond that initial entry point? This is where their autonomous nature really becomes a problem.
This is truly the art of worm propagation. And they employ some remarkably sophisticated strategies. We can generally categorize them. First, you have scanning methods. Early worms, like the Morris worm, use random scanning, basically guessing IP addresses,
Wow.
not very efficient. More advanced worms use topological scanning. They leverage network information routing tables, DNS, to quickly identify and infect nearby systems within the same network, much faster. Even more efficient is hit list scanning. The worm comes preloaded with a list of known vulnerable hosts, allows for an incredibly fast initial spread.
Okay, so they get smarter over time.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Then you have methods that exploit our interconnectedness. Social network-based propagation prioritizes immediate contacts on platforms like Facebook or Twitter, uses that rich connectivity for rapid spread, and then there are those that use familiar vectors like email and file sharing propagation. Think of the infamous I love you worm,
Oh, yeah, I remember that one.
spread globally through malicious email attachments,
Mhm.
cause chaos. What's truly fascinating, though, are the more advanced techniques. Some worms use a backchaining method. They exploit a vulnerability, then pull the actual malicious payload down from the original host computer. The ramen worm did this, for instance. It even disabled security software before installing its main payload. Very sneaky.
Clever in a destructive way.
And then you have hybrid propagation, combining multiple methods for maximum efficiency. The configure worm was a master of this. It used local scanning, neighborhood scanning, global probing. It could adapt and spread incredibly widely across all sorts of different networks.
So the underlying point here is that worms aren't just about finding one way in. They're fundamentally designed for this relentless, multifaceted hunt for new targets. They adapt their strategy to whatever network environment they find themselves in. It means they're incredibly persistent.
Exactly. Persistent in finding ways to not just get onto your network, but to move laterally and infect other systems once they're inside.
Right.
So once a worm has successfully spread its tentacles throughout a system or network, what's its ultimate goal? What kind of malicious payload does it usually deliver? That's where the real damage often happens. These payloads can lead to a whole variety of harmful outcomes. A very common one is data theft. The worm harvests sensitive information, login credentials, financial data, personal details, you name it, usually for identity theft or fraud. Another frequent payload is installing backdoor access, basically giving attackers a secret entry point for remote control over the infected systems later on.
So they can come back anytime.
Precisely. Worms can also trigger denial of service attacks, DOS attacks, flooding networks or servers with traffic, causing outages or instability. And one of the most dangerous outcomes is botnet formation. This is where infected devices get turned into a network of bots, all controlled by attackers, which can then be used for coordinated cyber attacks on a massive scale, often without the user ever even knowing their machine is involved.
Can you give us a couple of real-world examples, ones that really highlight the destructive potential of these payloads?
Absolutely. The Stuxnet worm is probably one of the most famous or infamous. It specifically targeted industrial control systems, primarily in Iran. It used multiple zero-day exploits. These are vulnerabilities completely unknown to the software vendors at the time.
Making them incredibly hard to defend against.
Exactly. Its payload was designed to subtly damage the centrifuges used in uranium enrichment. Highly sophisticated, very targeted. Then there's the WannaCry ransomware worm. That spread globally in 2017. It exploited a critical vulnerability in Windows systems, allowing it to rapidly encrypt data across networks, demanding a Bitcoin ransom for its release. Huge impact worldwide.
The ingenuity, if you can call it that, of these worms really shines when we look at how they manage to stay hidden. It's not enough for them to just get in and do damage. They want to stick around, maintain a persistent presence, and avoid detection. How do they pull that off?
They're quite clever about it, yeah. They use persistence mechanisms to make sure they survive even after system reboots or attempts to remove them. They might modify crucial system files, create hidden backdoors, or even inject their code into legitimate system processes, essentially hiding in plain sight.
And evasion. How do they avoid security software?
Well, they employ a variety of techniques there. One common one is polymorphism. They constantly change their own code structure. This generates new signatures, which renders traditional signature-based antivirus software much less effective. It can't keep up. Another is behavior mimicking. They try to imitate legitimate software processes or normal network traffic to just blend in and avoid triggering security alerts. They can also use encryption for their payloads and their command and control communications, making it harder for security analysts to figure out what they're up to. We've even seen advanced tactics like stealth execution, where malware operates silently in the background, using hidden files and shell scripts. And anti-forensic tactics, things like modifying system logs, hiding files, or even altering basic system commands to prevent discovery during an investigation.
That's quite a sophisticated cloak and dagger approach. So if they're so good at hiding, how can you, the listener, even tell if you've been hit? What are the common symptoms?
Well, while they are stealthy, there are often clues. You should look out for things like unusual network activity, or maybe consistently high bandwidth usage. A significant slowdown in your system's performance is another big one. Unexpected pop-ups appearing, files that suddenly appear corrupted or just go missing entirely, or even unauthorized emails being sent from your device without your knowledge. Any of these could be indicators that a worm is present and active.
Okay. We've covered the traditional landscape of worms pretty thoroughly, but now let's turn our attention to what's really on the cutting edge. And it's potentially, well, a little unsettling. The emergence of AI worms.
Yes, this represents an entirely new paradigm. AI worms leverage artificial intelligence to significantly enhance their propagation and overall effectiveness. And here's the crucial distinction. Unlike the traditional worms we've been discussing, these AI worms do not rely on exploiting traditional code vulnerabilities to spread. That's key. Instead, they manipulate the AI models themselves to generate seemingly harmless text or even images that actually contain malicious code or instructions.
Right, and I read about this. As a deliberate nod to the original Morris worm, researchers at Cornell Tech Ben Nassi, Stav Cohen, and Ron Bitton unveiled a proof-of-concept AI worm just this year, 2024. They fittingly named it Morris II.
Yes, Moore's II perfectly illustrates how these new threats operate. It uses what they call adversarial self-replicating prompts, basically tricking AI systems like chatbots or email assistants into generating responses that embed malicious code. So imagine you're interacting with an AI assistant. Maybe it helps draft emails for you. It generates a seemingly normal response. But if that response was infected by Morris II and you then interact with it, maybe you just reply to the email it drafted,
Yeah.
your machine could become infected through that interaction.
Wow, so the AI itself becomes the attack vector.
Yeah, precisely. And Morris II has already demonstrated some pretty concerning capabilities in the lab. It can steal sensitive data from emails processed by AI assistants, including major models like ChatGPT and Gemini Pro. We're talking names, phone numbers, credit card details, even social security numbers scraped right out of email content. It can also spread via spam propagation, where infected AI systems automatically forward malicious content to new targets in your contact list, for instance. And it's not just text. What's even more concerning is that these malicious prompts can be embedded within images, exploiting multimodal AI systems that process both text and visual data.
So what really sets these AI worms apart then, beyond just how they infect, what are their defining characteristics?
They truly stand out in a few ways. First, their self-replication comes via AI prompts, not code vulnerabilities. That fundamentally changes the attack surface we need to defend. Second, they demonstrate incredible adaptability and evasion. They can potentially learn from interactions and dynamically adjust their behavior to mimic legitimate traffic, making them much harder to detect. Third, they can be programmed for targeted propagation. Imagine an AI worm designed to specifically go after systems within a certain organization or carrying a specific type of data.
That's scary.
And finally, they enable the automation of exploitation. They could potentially scan for and exploit vulnerabilities with a speed and scale that's just impossible for human attackers.
The implications and risks here feel profound.
They really are. Think about large-scale data exfiltration from systems we're increasingly trusting with our most sensitive information. Think about the potential disruption of critical infrastructure, power grids, healthcare systems, financial networks through intelligent manipulation rather than just brute force. Or even state-sponsored corporate espionage, stealing intellectual property by subtly influencing AI assistants used by researchers or engineers. And there's also the chilling possibility of political and social manipulation through highly sophisticated AI-driven disinformation campaigns, weaponizing the AI models themselves.
So what does this mean for the future of cybersecurity? Where are we headed?
Well, the researchers behind Morris II and others in the field anticipate seeing AI worms like this emerge in the wild within the next, say, 2 to 3 years, especially as generative AI ecosystems continue to develop and become even more integrated into our daily lives and critical systems. This truly highlights a new and frankly concerning era of cybersecurity threats. It demands a completely fresh approach to defense.
Okay. Given this ever-evolving threat landscape, from the traditional worms we know to these unsettling new AI variants, how can you, the listener, actually protect yourself? What are the most effective prevention and mitigation strategies we should be thinking about?
It really requires a multi-layered, proactive approach. There's no single silver bullet. First, the basics still absolutely apply. You need reliable antivirus and anti-malware software. Keep it updated, real-time protection enabled, equally critical protections and software updates. Enable automatic updates for your operating system, your browser, all your applications. These patches frequently close the very vulnerabilities worms exploit.
Patching is crucial.
Absolutely crucial. Beyond that, strong firewalls and network security tools are essential for blocking unauthorized access attempts. Good digital hygiene also goes a very long way. Practice safe browsing and email habits. Be suspicious of unsolicited links and attachments. Only download software from trusted sources. Always use strong, unique passwords. Use a password manager. And enable multi-factor authentication, MFA, wherever possible. MFA is a critical barrier.
Yeah, MFA makes a huge difference.
It really does. And regularly back up your important data. Use external drives or secure cloud services. And, crucially, test those backups occasionally to make sure you can actually restore them if needed. For organizations, things like endpoint detection and response, EDR solutions, provide more advanced monitoring and automated remediation capabilities. And just generally, it's good practice to disable unused services and ports on your devices to minimize the potential attack surface. And always monitor for threats, analyze logs if you can, and have an incident response plan ready, especially for businesses.
That's a really comprehensive list for prevention. But what if, despite all those precautions, you suspect an infection? What are the immediate steps someone should take?
Okay, if you suspect a worm infection, the very first and most critical step is immediate isolation. Disconnect the infected device from the network, unplug the Ethernet cable, turn off Wi-Fi, disconnect it from the internet entirely. This stops it spreading further.
Cut it off.
Yep. Exactly. Then perform full system scans with your updated antivirus or anti-malware tools. Let it run completely. If that standard software fails to find or remove it, you might need to look for specialized worm removal tools. Some security vendors offer these for specific widespread worm variants. In really severe cases, a system restore might work, but use it with caution. Some worms can actually infect restore points. Often, the safest bet for a severe infection is a clean reinstallation of the operating system after backing up your clean data. Starting fresh. Sometimes it's the only way to be sure. After any removal, conduct a post-infection security review. Apply any missing patches immediately, update all your passwords, especially admin passwords, and always try to analyze logs and report the incident if possible, especially in business context, to understand how it happened and prevent it recurring. Now, for the emerging AI worms specifically, we need some additional strategies on top of those basics. This includes focusing on secure application design for AI systems themselves, with really strict input validation to try and filter out those adversarial prompts. Also, implementing human-in-the-loop verification. This means critical actions suggested by an AI agent might require human approval before execution.
A human check.
A human check, yes.
Okay.
And ultimately, we'll need AI-driven monitoring and next-generation security tools that use AI themselves to identify and respond to these novel AI-based threats in real time. Fighting fire with fire, in a sense.
Wow. This has been a truly eye-opening deep dive. We've journeyed from those earliest, almost primitive, autonomous digital invaders through the intricate ways they spread and cause damage, and now right up to the critical distinction and the emerging, potentially revolutionary threat of AI worms like Morris II. It's clear that while the digital world constantly presents new challenges, your awareness and these proactive measures we've discussed remain your absolute best defense.
Absolutely. And perhaps the final thought to leave you with, as AI becomes increasingly integrated into, well, everything, our daily lives, our critical systems, the very line between a traditional digital vulnerability and this new concept of intelligence manipulation is going to blur. And this raises a really important question for all of us. How will our cybersecurity strategies need to adapt when the attacker can leverage the very intelligence we increasingly rely on?
That is a powerful thought to consider as we move forward. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. We really encourage you to keep exploring the fascinating and, yes, sometimes alarming world of cybersecurity.